Well, heading into week 3, we've got some really intriguing matchups. Some of the conferences in our area starting conference play. We'll get into the NHC and the ACAC's premier matchups
Easy
in just
for you
a
to
second.
say.
Exactly. But let's start off with the SAC. Bishop Dwenger at Northside. Northside's a team that can play some defense. They went down and lost by 2 against the Fightin' Zagundas in Delta.
Right.
You know how tough of a game and how tough of a place that can be. But they've got to be fired up getting ready for a 2-0 Saints team.
They will be, and in fact, this is the Revenge Bowl because Northside's beaten Dwenger 2 years in a row now. And so Dwenger wants revenge, and they want to be able to knock off their city rival. However, I actually think Northside defensively has to improve a lot. They allowed 42 points against against Delta last week. They have to do a better job, but my goodness, let's not find fault in Mike Levette of Northside. What he did with Delta, 6 touchdowns, 4 through the air, 2 on the ground. Offensively, Northside's clicking on all cylinders. Bishop Dwenger's going to have to really come up with a defensive game plan to contain Michael Levette. And the Northside offensive line's growing. They're doing a better job. That was a question in my mind going into this season, but they've actually done a really nice job. But defensively, they allowed 42 points to Delta, and Bishop Dwenger has a lot more weapons in its arsenal than Delta does. So if Northside doesn't play better defense this week, they'll be in trouble. And
if you're Dwenger approaching this game, you know you can't shoot yourself in the foot. In the first half against Concordia last week, I was out there at Zollner Stadium. They threw an interception. They fumbled a punt early in that game. It allowed Concordia to make it a game at least until halftime. That's something you really can't afford to against a better team in Northside, I would think.
Well, that's true. And the thing that really benefited Dwenger last week against Concordia, it's funny, I ended up speaking with a couple of Concordia kids at Taco Bell after the game on Friday night.
Beautiful place to meet afterwards.
Hey, that's where all the cool people hang out. And so they said that Dwenger just wore them down with their depth as the game went on. Like you said, in the second half, it was 20-0 Dwenger in the second half. Northside doesn't have the depth that Bishop Dwenger does, so that will be a concern. I don't know what the weather's going to be like. If it's going to be really hot this Friday night, that could come into play as well with the lack of depth that Northside has compared to Dwenger. So Dwenger wants to just to mix up their offense. They want to pound it. They want Fia Cable to run. And then when you worry about that, they can hit you over the top with Water Cutter and Scent Liver. And so, Dwenger has that balanced offense that's just going to create nightmares. I like Dwenger in this game, but if Dwenger, like you said, if Dwenger doesn't take care of the ball, if they have penalties, if they play dumb, then Northside has the ability to put up points in a hurry on them.
Real quick, a couple of other games in the SAC that could be crucial this week. As we mentioned earlier in the show, Wayne plays Concordia. We'll have to see because the Generals haven't played a team from the Summit City yet this season. If they can keep it up. Also, it's hard to say that it's hard to believe that these two teams are 0-2 right now. But Lures at Southside, none of those coaches involved in that game want to see their team start off 0-3, especially in conference.
Well, in that rivalry, that Southside rivalry, those two programs, it's a good rivalry. They don't like each other, but it's a good rivalry, and there's going to be athleticism and abundance on the field. Eddie Fields told me the other night after the Snyder game, he was so disappointed in himself and in his program and in his players. He said they were going to fix some things this week. So I wouldn't want to be part of Southside's practices this week. Both teams have really shot themselves in the foot this year, like you were saying. And so it'll be interesting to see who plays the cleaner, smarter game this week. I actually think Lures has a little bit more diverse offense, and so they can mix up the run and pass a little bit better than Southside can. However, when you have Donovan Clark, you're always one play away from scoring. So it's really going to be a good game. Obviously, one team's going to come out with their first victory of the season. I think it'll be Lures.
All right, should be a good one. Let's move on to the NHC because this is always one of the premier matchups when you're talking the NHC at the beginning of the season. It always happens in week 3. It's Homestead battling East Noble. This year's round will be up in Kendallville. We know Chad Zolman, we know Luke Amstutz, they love offense. They have teams that can put up big points. I don't know that we've seen the finished product for Homestead. I think they're a work in progress, although Logan Ormsby, 319 yards last week, 3 touchdowns in a win against Valpo. But East Noble seems like, even though they've got a new quarterback this year, they've picked up right where they left off.
Well, it's going to sound goofy when I say this. I think this is going to be a defensive nightmare, and not that it's going to be 7-6, but it's going to be a defensive nightmare for the coaching staffs because both offenses, and I always talk about balanced offenses, and that's easier said than done at the high school level. Not everybody has the personnel to be able to have a quarterback who can really throw the ball well, and then also a running game to go with it to really keep the defenses off balance. Both these programs can do that. Logan Ormsby, like you said, 319 yards passing the other day, but he also ran the ball 16 times. That wasn't just 16 broken plays where he scrambled to save himself. Those were scheduled runs, called runs, because he can run the ball, ran for 66 yards. So if you're East Noble's defensive staff, what are you going to contain? Are you going to contain the run, or are you going to and then get beat by Ormsby over the top, or are you going to stop the pass and then it's going to open up his option attack? And so that's going to be a problem. Conversely, with Homestead, East Noble has two guys, Bryce Wolf at quarterback and then Brandon Mabel at running back. They can beat you. I mean, Bryce Wolf threw for almost 200 yards the other day, and then Mabel ran for almost 100. And in fact, if you think Mabel's a one-dimensional guy that's only worried about offense, scored 2 touchdowns offensively, 2 touchdowns defensively. So he can beat you any number of ways. But the defensive staffs are really going to have their problems because if you load up the box, you're in trouble over the top. And if you worry about the pass, they're going to run the ball on you. I really think it's going to be a fascinating matchup from a schematic standpoint this week. I like East Noble to go dancing with Wolf and win the game.
I do too. Dancing with Wolf. They got Fox out there on the wide receiver position, who's dangerous, over 1,000 yards receiving last year, which you don't see very often in high school. But as far as the weapons, does East Noble have the best weapons in the NHC? I know we got the Tranquil brothers out in Carroll, which is tough to top those guys who might both be playing Division I football when it's all said and done. But when you look at the spread offense and what they run at East Noble, with Mabel, with Fox, and now with Wolf at the helm, do they maybe have the most talent? You know they're always going to have big guys
New
up front. You make a good point.
It's a four-headed monster in the NHC. They're going to beat the tar out of each other by the end of this season between New Haven, Carroll, East Noble, and Homestead. There may be a champion may end up with 1 or 2 losses, and so I don't know if anybody can run the table through that gamut of a schedule. It's going to be really, really difficult. A lot of talent in the NHC, really more so than the SAC. And you know, it's blasphemy around here to say the NHC is better than the SAC, but I think it might be this year.
All right, let's move on to the ACAC real quick. Leo at Adams Central is the big game. Leo has pretty much owned that conference, although, you know, they did have a 3-way tie at the top last year. But when you take a look at the Lions, they're 2-0. They're scoring a bunch of points, albeit against Norwell and Angola. No offense to those programs, but perhaps not up to that level that Leo is year in and year out. And then Adams Central's coming off a couple of wins. I know they're a 1A school. They're smaller. Leo would assume to be the heavy favorite, but Michael Mosher seems to have things going in the right direction with that Adams Central program.
Well, they do a nice job, but it's really a tough task to go in and compete with Leo. I'm counting the minutes till Leo gets out of that league and joins the NHC, and then we can see them week in and week out with a more even test for that program. And it'll be more challenging for the kids and the coaching staffs as well. I really don't think that's going to be that big. I think Leo will probably win comfortably over Adams Central. I tell you, the matchup involving ACAC teams that I'm really intrigued by is Woodland and Heritage. Heritage bounced back. I know it was against Norwell again, but they bounced back, got their first win. Woodland got spanked by New Haven, but that's nothing to be ashamed about because New Haven's really tough. I think that Woodland and Heritage game, that's a coin flip. That's really going to be an interesting matchup this week in that league.
Yeah, Branson Dawson did a nice job last week at quarterback for Heritage, and I think Heritage may have found their next go-to guy in Cole Gerardo. He seems to be a tough matchup for opposing defenses. Anything else you're looking forward to about Week 3?
Well, you know, it's going to be interesting. Columbia City Belmont is another NHC matchup that I think is an evenly based game, and I really think that these two programs, they're nice programs. You better get there early, though, because Belmont had 6 guys last week run for at least 43 yards, and Columbia City had 3 that did that. So this game may be over by about 7:48, 7:49 p.m.
We like that when we got an 11 o'clock deadline.
Yeah, so that's going to be a really competitive game. I'm interested to see who can win that. And I know that Churubusco isn't usually tested until the last 2 weeks of the season with Lakeland and Fairfield, but this week they go to Prairie Heights. Prairie Heights is better than they have been in the past. That's going to be a somewhat of a test for Busco. I wouldn't be surprised if they end up winning by 20, 21 points, but at least it's not going to be a 40, 42 point blowout like it normally is. I think Busco will have to play well to get on the road to get out of there with a win this week.
The Palisade era off to a good start after a 42-6 win last week and a 56-0 win, I believe, in week 1. So we'll have to see if they can keep it rolling at Prairie Heights. Of course, we'll have all the coverage you can handle on the Highlight Zone Friday night. Tom Davis will have all the coverage throughout the week in the News Sentinel. But for now, I'm Glenn Marini. He's Tom Davis, and we'll see you next Monday on Inside the Zone.